Hello and welcome to another edition of Bakul Talks. Well, you just saw in the introduction of the Bakul Library and the talks that we used to have there. But then last year, when the pandemic happened and the libraries were closed, we started these online talks, public discussions and lectures on topics of common interest. Okay, but it's kind of funny because one of the last talks we had was in January, February, where the topic was vaccines aaya, virus gaya. And just imagine, that time we thought that maybe now that the vaccines have arrived, the virus has gone, but here we are, still stuck. Anyway, today happens to be a very important day, the American Independence Day, and we are talking about volunteerism. Some of you might be wondering, what's the connection? Why should we be talking about volunteerism on the day of American independence? Well, there is a very strong connection, my dear friends. Not only the fact that the American, independence happened through a revolutionary war, which was fought largely by volunteer soldiers. They were volunteer part-time soldiers. In fact, they were against a regular army. Okay, but that's another story altogether. But more importantly, today is the foundation day of the world's oldest democracy. Okay, and so on that occasion, we thought, why don't we explore a connection between democracy and volunteerism? And there is a strong connection. A lot of people say, Benjamin Franklin, for instance, who was called the first American, like we call Gandhi as Bapu, Benjamin Franklin was called the first American. And he's, of course, known as one of the founding fathers of America. Benjamin Franklin talked about volunteerism as a key element of this new democracy that they were trying to create. Civic participation was very important. And not only that, even much later in the 1990s, one of the most famous formulations in political theory was by Robert Putnam, who introduced the concept of social capital. And he talked about volunteerism as a clear index of how healthy is your democracy. So on the day, the foundation day of the world's oldest democracy, we thought it would be wonderful to have a discussion on on the importance of volunteerism in the oldest democracy of the US and compare it with how it works in the largest democracy, that is India. So on this occasion, we're very happy that we have with us Mr. Salil Kader, an old friend of Bakul and my old friend also personally. And Salil is the advisor, cultural affairs of the US Consulate General in Hyderabad. And we have had a long and very rich relationship, which continues even now between the US Consulate and Bakul. And, Salil initiated that entire relationship. So we are very happy that Salil is also a student of social sciences, student of history. And we're very happy to have you, Salil, with us. And happy 4th of July. Happy Independence Day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sujit. I remember, being on this very show a few months ago, talking about Lucky Ali and music, and it's wonderful to be back and talking to you virtually. Though we did get a chance to meet in between during the pandemic, but very happy to be here, and I wish everyone who is watching this show a very happy 4th of July. This is such an important day in the life of all Americans and America, and as you said, Sujit, that it marks the beginning of what we recognize as the oldest democracy. So thank you so much for inviting me, and looking forward to the conversation today.
So why don't we just begin by, I kind of gave a little context to this relationship between democracy and volunteerism. But we generally see that volunteerism is given a lot of importance in American life. So could you, I'm sure you would have similar things, because I remember when I started Bakul and I was telling people in 2006-07 that, I want to work on volunteerism. And people would look at me and with this look like, ye kaun sa janwar hai? We understand environment, we understand education. What do you mean by that? Right? Whereas in the US, it's kind of such an important thing. So maybe we can begin with your observations on the importance of volunteerism in American life and polity.
Sure. I think you've raised a very important question, a very important topic on the American Independence Day. The commitment to volunteerism is something that has been a hallmark of American civic life right from the very beginnings, right from the since the time the country was founded. And this was you go back to Benjamin Franklin, and you see that he was, I was reading somewhere just before we started this conversation, that he formed the first volunteer fire department in 1736. And ever since Americans have been involved, and many youth are exposed to volunteering through different groups. It has become a quintessential American value, and it remains to this day. As I said, youth are involved in several volunteering activities, be it the youth groups, the religious groups, the scouting organizations. Large companies organize volunteering opportunities. Educational institutions organize these. Churches, local communities, you name it. It can be in any form. You could feed the poor. You could go out teach, tend to the sick, the elderly. You could support political causes, as we've seen a lot of, when elections happen, there are lots of volunteers who take part in campaigning for the candidates that they support. They take up social issues. They go out and coach kids. They rescue animals, you name it. There are numerous other causes that Americans of all ages associate themselves with, and it is basically allowing them to be part of change, to take direct part in action. But most importantly, it fosters a sense of community, a community well-being, and contributing to the community, making changes to the community, and advancing their goals within the community. And there was a particular survey. It's kind of dated, but it still holds a lot of importance, if I may. One particular fact that really struck out to me, that more than 60 million people, Americans, were volunteering at a time. Then this is about 4-5 years ago, that a particular survey putting in more than 50 hours per year into volunteering. And this is not only usually considered that, oh, okay, retired people, they have a lot of time and they do it. But no, people between the ages of 35 to 44 were the most likely volunteers. So this is the middle of where people are busy with their professional careers, and they are also giving time to volunteerism. So volunteerism has become, as I said, a quintessentially American value. And I remember this conversation that you and I had about when you started Bakul, or the idea of Bakul when it came up. And of course, I was one of those people who was very curious to know as to what is it that you're going to start and how are you going to do it. Because the way we are, the way our education system is, the way we've been brought up, volunteering isn't something that is essentially a part of our academic curriculum, and it isn't something that we do as a habit, which is almost as a habit that most Americans today would do. Of course, things have changed, and that is what I am looking forward to, even hearing from you as to how is it that you see volunteerism today. And also do talk about your own experience of going on the International Visitor Leadership Program, the exchanges, our flagship exchange program at the State Department, and what was your experience taking part in the IVLP, which incidentally was themed around volunteerism.
Thank you very much, Salil, for your observations, very interesting observations. And yes, I mean, of course, I remember the IVLP thing that I went on also. I don't know if you remember, you had messaged me that when are you going to the US? And I didn't know that I had been selected, because you don't apply for it. You're just selected. And then I later on found that, okay, I was invited on this. So that was indeed a wonderful experience. But before I talk about the IVLP, a couple of things that Salil talked about that I just want to add to. For me, I was really impressed. Like Salil talked about the statistics of how many Americans volunteer. Can you imagine us having a statistics like that in India? Apparently, the census operation in America also does a census of volunteer engagement, because as I was saying, they see it as an important function of how successful a democracy America is in terms of whether they're able to engage, to what extent they're able to engage volunteers. And that is something that I saw even with NGOs that I visited, non-profits, they call them in the US, because non-profits typically in India would try to claim success in terms of how many people's lives they have impacted, or what's the turnover, all of that. In America, what I found very interesting, given a person who wanted to demonstrate the power of volunteerism, is that they would also talk about how many volunteer hours they have been able to harness. So that was something very interesting personally for me. The other point, though, just to respond to Salil before I respond to his questions, just to add to what Salil was saying, I remember in 2006 we started a campaign to donate books to set up to start Bakul. Bakul started in 2007, but the mobilization started, and we were trying to demonstrate the power of volunteerism. We said we will set up a library entirely by mobilizing people without taking any institutional funding. And a lot of people said, sounds too good to be true. Few people believed. Now, that was a time when many people also, a friend who was that time studying in the US, he drew my attention to another campaign that was happening. A campaign that all of us are now familiar with, Barack Obama's first election campaign. Now, initially, many people thought he was this great, like what do we call, a dark horse, but he probably doesn't have a chance. And Obama refused, the kind of funding that normally goes into American elections, which sometimes people criticize as crony capitalism also, like the Texas oil lobby or other such lobbies funding the elections. He mobilized contributions from individual. He went retail, and every individual who contributed $5 for him ended up, campaigning for him. Not only that, they ensure that they vote. So volunteerism, as Salil mentioned, works in democracy in two ways. One is, it is your civic participation. You decide that, we are not waiting for the government to do things for us. We are there to do things. There is a change that needs to happen. We will do it. Okay. That is a kind of course, a kind of index of healthy democracy. The other is, we will go out of our way to ensure that we get the people we want to elect. So the couple of things there. Talking about my IVLP, it was a wonderful experience. It was like a mini United Nations. There were like 103 people from 101 countries. So, but being with all these people on this program where I was exposed to how volunteerism works in the US, I also realized that there is no one way in which volunteerism works outside India. Earlier, we would think that West mein aisa hota hai. It's not like that. And all of us, so I could differentiate between how it happens in Europe or within Europe, different countries in Latin America, and all these 100 people, all of us were convinced about one thing. Nowhere is it as deep-rooted or as intrinsic to the culture as it is in America. For example, one instance I'll tell you, I was very impressed when I saw that the state of California had a secretary position, what we call ministers here. They had a secretary for volunteerism. I was amazed. Here in Orissa, we have a Department of Youth Services, which has volunteerism as one of its mandates, but the Department of Youth Services is actually the stepchild of the Department of Sports and Youth Services. Sports becoming the much more dominant big brother right now. But then there, you had a secretary, and California was the first state, and then of course there were other states like New York that followed. And when I asked Karen Baker, the secretary, we had a wonderful interaction, and she said that in California they have these, even now if you follow the news, there are these wildfires going on, and they saw that it is these volunteer firemen, and Salil did mention Benjamin Franklin and the volunteer fire service that he had started. So it is these volunteer firemen who were the first to go out and help. So they thought that this is a huge resource that needs to be harnessed properly, and so a separate department. So that was a revelation. The importance that American government gives to volunteerism. And what was also interesting was the kind of professionalism that volunteerism entailed. In India, to some extent, we think that chalta hai because anyway I'm volunteering. No, I'm not taking money, so it does not matter. I can afford to be unprofessional, but they're very professional about volunteerism in the US. And the third thing I would mention here is the scale at which it happens. I was amazed. We participated in many volunteering activities initiated by corporates or other civic groups, and the scale at which thousands of people joining. And I heard about the Martin Luther King Day of Service, which was very inspirational for me, where the entire country gets together in acts of service. And inspired by that, actually, we started here that, the first time we went beyond our region of Bhubaneswar and Odisha, and we organized national days of service in which all our volunteers were spread out across the country. We got them to mobilize their friends and organize something on a national scale. That was something that happened, out of inspiration from what I saw in the US. So I think I'll stop here for now. But Salil, I would like you to talk about, you talked about how it was at the beginning. I also talked about it. But I'm sure you have also seen how, volunteerism has changed in India, right? So would you like to talk a little about that, about how maybe now we are, it's not been the same since 10 years, 15 years back when we were initially talking about volunteerism? Because we also had a discussion about volunteerism, this whole discourse when I was starting Bakul. And then meanwhile, shortly after you joined the US consulate and you got involved. So how have you seen things change in India or volunteerism happen in India, and anything else you would like to add about the US scene?
So, I'll just go back to the time when I joined the organization, the consulate here. But even before that, when you and I were students back in the university, when the super cyclone hit Odisha, you remember, we went out and collected a lot of material, food grain, clothes, books, etc. And we had sent it through various organizations back to Odisha from Hyderabad. I remember that time, and those were things that something that was very organic. It wasn't something that we were doing. The only exposure to volunteerism that we had were people perhaps doing Shramdan as part of NSS or NCC. There wasn't a structured movement. And when I joined the organization, and of course, I myself learned a lot about volunteerism through my own organization, of course, talking about American values to young people. And as an anecdote, I can tell you that there was, I think it was 2010. I was in a particular city talking to a group of about 100 engineering students of a very well-known engineering college, and in a class, I asked people how many of them actually go out and volunteer, and I was very surprised, and I shouldn't have been actually, but I was very surprised that in a class of about 100 people, students who were sitting there, one hand went up, and this was this young girl student who said that she volunteered with an organization that took care of rescued animals, and that was it. That was an entire class, and that's one hand. And I gave them examples of, this is also volunteering. This is also volunteering. Do you take part? And there was nothing, absolutely nothing that came out. And and then of course, I came to Bhubaneswar, met with you, saw what Bakul was doing, and then it struck me that a lot of organizations at that point of time were not really giving young people the kind of platform that Bakul does. I mean, your doors are open, young people can walk in, they can take up the kind of role that they want. There are no questions asked. There isn't anything about, are you doing a social work degree? Is this part of your internship, etc., etc.? Is this your project? No. If you can come in, if you have time to donate it, and which is the biggest donation that one can do in the current times. Actually, I will throw this question back to you about how the scene has changed. But for me, what I observed today is I see so many more organizations out there that are providing platforms for young people to come and volunteer. I see so many more young people who are doing this on their own. And Bakul is just one organization that we work with, but and I would like to tell our listeners, our audiences here today, that there is a particular project that the consulate is doing with three organizations in the states of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Odisha. In Odisha, we have Bakul as the partner. In Andhra Pradesh, we have the Ken Foundation based in Vizag, and in Hyderabad, we have the Youngistan Foundation. All volunteers. This entire project called the YCLAP Young Climate Action Leaders Project is focused on involving young people in their own way of how they could contribute to solving issues around climate change. So this is entirely volunteer driven. I'm glad that these are three organizations that are based entirely on volunteerism itself. I would request you to go back and look up the other two organizations also, Ken Foundation in Vizag and Youngistan in Hyderabad. But there are several others, Rubaru in Hyderabad, that we work with. They are driven by the spirit of volunteering, and a lot of young people today get that platform to do more volunteering work. They are going out and associating themselves with causes. And I think the past year and a half that the entire world is going through the pandemic and is being impacted by it, we are seeing amazing examples of how people have come out and said that we are going to contribute in whatever way possible, be it running errands for people who are down with COVID, picking up medicines from one place, delivering it at another, cooking for people, even if it is 10 meals a day. They are going out and feeding animals. There aren't many places which, a lot of restaurants and others which would throw out food. There would be the feral dogs and others would get food, but this is not happening. So a lot of people are going out and helping people in their own way, and it is purely being driven by an internal motive to go out and contribute to build the community that they are part of, to support the community that they are part of. So I have seen a lot of change. But Sujit, I'll come back to you because you do this on an everyday basis. You talk about volunteerism. I know Bakul is being studied as a case study in several of our management schools. So what are the changes that you have seen in the volunteering scene since the time you went on this exchange program, IVLP, from then to now, and how has the volunteerism scene changed in India? Over to you, Sujit.
Thank you, Salil. I think before I talk about how I see the volunteerism scene as having changed, I would like to, a couple of things that you mentioned, I would like to kind of elaborate on that, particularly, on, this very important point you made about the way people have volunteered during this pandemic. And a lot of people have volunteered by just on their phone and on the laptop, ensuring that oxygen reaches the person, that people know where there are hospital beds. It's been amazing. And in fact, disaster has always brought out a lot of volunteerism in Indians. And on this, I will also say one thing, and when I was in the US, I was constantly also reflecting on this, doing this comparison between what I was seeing in the US, what happens in India. And I realized, it's very interesting. If you see, there are these three, circles. There's an individual, there's a family, there's a community. Okay. I was actually struck when one person told me in the US, thank God we have volunteerism. And that made me think, and then I realized that what she meant was, and she also helped me understand that we know Americans as being very individualistic, or it's a very individualistic society. But at the same time, the family as a unit is not very strong, but the community is strong. So the individual works for himself and he works for the community. So the community participation is very strong. what happens in India, and I realized that to some extent it was happening in the Latin American countries. We had participants from there as well, as I was telling you, is there is the individual and then there is a family. The family for us is very strong and very powerful and very loose. So we do a lot of informal volunteerism. For instance, even in a non-pandemic situation or a non-disaster situation, notice that we see a lot of volunteerism during the natural disasters, cyclones. For example, let's say a family friend falls sick, I go to the hospital and tend to that person. Now that is volunteerism as well, right? So for us, the family is very big. It could be friends, relatives, all of that. So where we are weak traditionally is reaching out to a person who seem to have no connect with us. The wider community where that person is impersonal. There's an impersonal connection. So we have a lot of personal volunteering, but very little or much little to that extent impersonal volunteering, but that has changed. So I'm sure when Salil, you asked how many of you volunteer, I'm sure many of them would have volunteered, but they would not see it as volunteering, because volunteering does not necessarily mean volunteering with organizations. Having said that, between 2007 and now, the biggest change is in 2007, I had to explain to people. It was difficult to make them understand, what I meant when I said that we are working on volunteerism. Now, I don't have to explain that. The number of volunteers who are coming to join us has increased, many times over from what it was in 2007. One of the reasons could be that we had just started then. We were not known, right? But even then, in the first few years, we had. But one thing that has changed, and something that I'm not very happy about, I would say, even if there were fewer people joining in then, they were staying for a longer period. Most of the initial volunteers in the first few years would never have asked me about a certificate. I don't think they understood the value of what they were doing in their professional careers. They just do it as something that they were doing for self-satisfaction. Or if at all they asked for a certificate, it may have been 5 years later or 7 years later. But nowadays, the number of people joining in, the number of internships has increased. A lot of people are looking for internships in a volunteer organization, okay, where they do the kind of work that we do. But internships is clearly with a perspective of getting a certificate. Of course, some interns, so more people are now joining, knowing how it is going to help them professionally, which was not the case earlier. And some among them stop their association after they meet the requirement. But there are some who continue. The experience converts them, and some of our best volunteers today are those who started out as interns who would have probably come just for a month. Maybe I'll get a certificate, get something, and go from there. So that is how I would wish more people had more time now. But the competitiveness has increased a lot. So young people have less time now. So yeah, these are some of my observations. But since a lot of young people are now joining with the hope that, particularly I see a lot of high school students joining now, which was not the case earlier. And the best thing is that parents are encouraging them, because parents see the value in it. Gone is a time when actually a lot of volunteers used to, lie to the parents about coming to Bakul and volunteering. Now, a lot of them do that with parental consent and parental encouragement, which is a good thing to see. But on that note, given the fact that there are a lot of these people who are also coming to us for internships or volunteering, are thinking of, applying abroad. Not everyone, but there is one significant segment that is thinking about applying to universities abroad, either for undergraduate studies or graduate studies, and they think that somehow the volunteering experience is going to help them a lot. Maybe Salil, you can talk a little about that aspect. Why do American universities, and a lot of these guys are applying to American universities, of course not only to American universities, but to a great extent. Maybe I think there would be young people here You could talk a lot about the importance of volunteerism in for an academic degree, maybe.
Yes, of course. And I think I should just start with the kind of exchanges that we run and how we look at them. A lot of youth exchanges that we run. One is the study of the United States institutes in various areas. There's media studies, there's women's leadership, uh, uh, and we are looking at younger people mostly doing their undergraduation, the first years of their undergraduation. We have the UGrad program, that is again a program for undergraduate students in their first year. We have for school students, we have the Youth Exchange and Study program. That's a year-long program. We have the Community College Initiative program. That is again a year-long program for students who may have dropped out of school for various reasons and are working right now. This is about providing them with vocational skills at regular community colleges for a year. So a lot of these programs where we send youth, we do look at what kind of volunteering experience do they have, because the idea of all these exchanges that I've just mentioned is to do more outside the classroom. How much more is a young person involved in doing things that are extracurricular. uh, Academics are important, there is no doubt about it. That becomes the primary criteria to get a college admission. But let me tell you, a lot of American schools today, and I was reading a survey which was done, I think 2019 or 2020, where there were uh, about 260 plus officers who are responsible for college admissions who were surveyed, and about 58 to 60% of them said that they do look at the volunteering experience that youth have put in when they're looking at prospective students, and they do give this particular aspect importance. So, and that's just a statistic, but broadly I must say that we at the consulate do look at volunteering as an important part. And of course, this is also an important part of the admission process. But why is this important? Because this is looking at somebody who has already contributed to the community. And again, I go back to my initial point that this is primarily a quintessential American value. And if you are someone who has already volunteered, you are bringing that value with yourselves to the institution, and that matches the values of the institution that you're going to study at, and it is going to contribute to the class. The experience that you've had with the community contributes to community building. You understand what it means to contribute to the community. So if you're volunteered, you've obviously gained some experience, you've made networks, you've become part of the community, you've learned some new skills, and most importantly, you are willing to do things which are outside the classroom and give time to it. Because as I said, uh, today giving time is the most important thing. And you you yourself said, Sujit, that initially volunteers at Bakul had to hide the fact that they were going to Bakul from their parents, and today parents are willfully sending them. I also think that is an important factor, because that keeps them away from the devices. So I think parents, and I would be very happy if my daughter were to go out and volunteer, because that means that is that much less time spent on an electronic device, be it sitting in front of a computer screen, which unfortunately the pandemic has forced them to, or just being on their phones. But yes, this is an important thing, not just for the US, which I strongly recommend any young person considering higher education to look at the US as an option, because the US provides some of the best quality institutions, the range of courses that are available, the range of institutions that are available, the strong alumni networks that one establishes after becoming part of an American institution, American education institution, and of course, as I said, the values that any American institution, the campus life that it brings in, that it allows you to do so much more outside just the college in terms of your personal growth, the opportunity to contribute to the communities that we live in. So yes, this is an important part, and I think people should look at it beyond just that certificate or beyond just the resume. It will automatically come. what you do is automatically going to figure on your resume, and it adds points not just for your college admissions but also for employment that you would look at once you finish school or college in any part of the world, including India. Sujit.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And also academically, I think because if as an academic, I have to contribute academically, I need to be able to question, I need to be able to take initiative. I think the most important thing about volunteerism is you are not remaining passive, you're taking initiative to do something, which is also important in your studies, where you don't just receive, like we say, ratta maro, what is given to you, but you engage with what you're studying. You are thinking, you are engaging with it. And I think that is the important thing that volunteerism also brings out. So I think why don't we take some questions from the audience? Those of you who are watching, wherever you're watching it on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, you can type in your questions in the comments box and we will take them. I think, is there anything else, Salil, you would like to add before we go to the questions?
I think we can, we've gone past the 30-minute mark that we thought we'll stick to for this conversation. But I think we can start taking questions from the audiences.
Yeah. So there is an interesting observation by Dina Krishna, who says that, he kind of concurs that the pandemic is teaching us a lot of volunteerism, and we have the power. This pandemic particularly, as I said, it has been remarkable in the way digital volunteerism, because a lot of people could not go out because disasters have always brought out a lot of volunteerism. Whenever we have a cyclone, as I was saying, Salil, I'm amazed to see so many people who I don't see as volunteers, and there's no organization that they have, but just it could be a group of auto rickshaw drivers coming out and doing things. And this time, of course, the nature of volunteerism has also changed. And that is something, when I was in 2010, I remember Visa showing us how using technology, and Facebook talked about how using technology they volunteered in Haiti, in the disaster there. And this pandemic, I think we have done remarkably. Prayash is asking, how do you see volunteerism in the near future? And what is the one thing that you think we should prioritize? Very profound question for me. Salil, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I was, this is a very good question, and I'll go back to Dina Krishna Mishra's question also, or his comment also about, volunteerism teaching a lot during the pandemic. And I keep saying this again and again, and I can repeat, go on about this ad nauseum, is about what is it that you can give. There is you cannot put a finger or underline or highlight and say this is what you can contribute, because, and I can say this about a lot of young people who must be listening. I know you're all very bright. 5 years, 10 years from now, you will all be very well placed in. A lot of you probably in the IT sector and earning a lot of money, from everywhere. So what is the easiest thing that you can do at that point of time is to write a check. But friends, let me tell you, that is the easiest thing to do. The easiest thing to do is to write a check. The most difficult thing is to lift yourselves up from that chair, go outside your office or home now, because it's all work from home. Go outside, do something, because and Prash, because you spoke about the future of volunteerism. I mean, the year and a half has shown that a lot of volunteerism can be done online, but and Sujit pointed out that people were basically doing this. They were creating websites and very quickly put together website of resources of people in need, and the resources that
information.
Absolutely, and that is important. So and so place has a bed, so and so place medicines are available, oxygen stocks are available. Somebody could, because there are a lot of people who are playing mischief online. So a lot of people just contributed their time sitting long hours together, just calling people, ensuring that these things were actually available. A lot of volunteerism went online because you could not go out and do much. The pandemic did not allow you to do that. But I was reading somewhere that the future of volunteering is not virtual. I kind of disagree, because even you can contribute in any which way possible when the world opens up, as it is in other parts of outside India. People are again going back and doing what they do best, that is going on to the streets, going into communities, and delivering what the community needs, and doing what you can. But again, I think the most valuable commodity or resource that you can deliver is time. That is at a premium. Everybody says, यार मैं कर सकता हूं, पर मेरे पास टाइम नहीं है. टाइम निकालना पड़ेगा और टाइम देना पड़ेगा. I think if you can contribute that does not have a dollar value or a rupee value associated with. Let me tell you, what you can do in terms of giving time, going out and actually doing things, does not have any tangible financial dollar rupee value can be associated with it. So I think the future of volunteerism is right out there. It is on you. Give your time, go out, do things. You should prioritize when you're making a routine. Make sure you put in, what can I do today to make a difference to my society, to my community, to my institution, to my family, whoever, but do something. Take that time out. That's what I would say about volunteerism in the future.
Just to add to Salil what you said, definitely, what we have also seen, for example, you were also part of it, the consulate was part of it, the kind of volunteerism that we also engage, not only in terms of life saving, but also in ensuring normalcy. The storytelling activities, for instance, that we have been doing. So people volunteering for that. A lot of people have been volunteering and taking online classes for children. And it opens up, I think the virtual platform also opens up other kinds of volunteering, which was otherwise not possible. I mean, for instance, we could get the best storytellers to tell, children in Odisha stories, because we could get them online, which we would not have been able to get them physically here. But coming back to this question of Prayash, there's something that I think about to some extent, not a very happy thing to be stating, but to some extent we have not got over our feudal mindset, in the sense that in a feudal mindset, you look at the king, Raja sab karega. Okay, and now to a great extent, we think that the government will do everything. Okay, now that has to change. If there is, after all, Salil, you'll be happy to know, when I was in the US on that program, okay, I'll tell you two things which I felt really proud of being an Indian. Okay, and when people ask them, what is one statement which sums up the spirit of volunteerism? And almost all, because in this program, because we were 100 of us, it was one of the best IBLP programs, as they told us, because the best speakers, who doesn't want to address a community of 100 people from 100 countries? Okay, and they all said, be the change you wish to see in the world, Gandhi. And then another interesting thing I'll tell you, they often use the word service. And I was puzzled. And I asked them, I said, we have come on a leadership program on volunteerism. But I see that the thought leaders in the US are using the word service instead of volunteerism. So I asked them. And then they said that, when you talk about volunteerism, very often people who volunteer have a chip on their shoulder. They think that, I am above the guys that we are doing. But the idea of service is actually inspired by the Indian ideal of seva, where you are at an equal platform. Seva mein, you are not above the person to whom you're helping out. And so they said that, so we are using the term service inspired by the Indian. And I felt so proud that, so I think as a future, we need to be, it's happening, but we need more and more people coming out, knowing that, democracy is what you make of it, right? So coming back to the point of why we are having this discussion today, the link between volunteerism and democracy. Democracy is what we make of it. And it does not happen once in 5 years when we go and vote in the elections. It is a daily activity of ensuring democracy runs. And I think that is something which is very interesting. I mean, there may be many problems in American life and polity, but I think there are problems in every society. But volunteerism is something that I really am impressed with, in how it works in the US. And I think that is something that we need to learn from the US, as you know, as how democratic, how to have a healthy democracy with people's participation.
Yep,
Salil,
I
what do
agree.
you think?
No, I completely agree, and I that the idea of service is beautiful. I think it describes volunteering even better than the word volunteering itself. And yes, there are people who believe that by volunteering, you are it's that you probably are the giver. By service, you are more as a contributor. It may be a little about semantics, but yeah, it does play out that way. And now that in India too, there is the National Week of the Volunteer in the US. We have Danutsav. It was the Joy of Giving Week till many years ago, and now called Danutsav. It is also about contributing and providing service and helping in any way possible, in every way possible. So I think that's a great point, and that is important for every democracy. I think the entire concept of uh, social responsibility, which a lot of organizations today come out with, it is coming out from there. And I completely agree, and I can feel your relation when somebody outside acknowledges that a value that they cherish so much has actually its roots back in your own country's civilization and culture. I think it does make everybody feel proud. The I think it is important that we go out and we do that more, and make our country even more proud of that particular value that has been accepted, adapted, and has become part of many other cultures. So I think that's a great feeling.
I think is there any other question? If there is, then you need to type in immediately. Otherwise, I think we have a wonderful end to our discussion. I think on a very good note, on a
Yeah,
very
I was just
proud
going to
note.
say that's a very good note to end this conversation on. Thank you so much, Sujit.
Thank you so much, Salil. It was wonderful having you. And thank you, all of you, for watching this show, and those of you who will be watching it subsequently, because it will remain, of course, on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So those of you who could not watch the entire episode, you can go back to the video and watch it. You can share the video with other people so that, who you think would benefit from the discussion that happened today. And please do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if that's where you're seeing it, or like our Facebook page, or follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sujit.
Bye.
Thank you so much for inviting me here. Yeah. Bye-bye, and
Bye.
wish you a happy 4th once again.
Happy 4th to you as well.
In education, that we are trying to promote reading. As statistics say, if 50% children in grade 5 cannot read the textbook of grade 2, then what is really happening? That's because the basic skills of reading and writing is not there. So we thought that if we have to change this cynicism, then we need to demonstrate what is possible with small contributions. So that is the idea basically that Bakul is trying to demonstrate, what is possible entirely with volunteerism, entirely with small little contributions. We asked people to contribute books to set up a public library in Bhubaneswar, and a children's library was set up in Bhubaneswar, and now that children's library has become a general library, a public library with more than 20,000 books. So that is one of the major things. Another major area of intervention is environment. A lot of environmental education, but through films and through creative methods. So we have a traveling film festival on environment. We go to schools, colleges, apartments and screen films on environment, primarily on climate change and on issues of water and sanitation, two issues that we're working in. And at the libraries also, we conduct a lot of workshops on creativity. We all want the world to be a better place, and we have our own ideas of how it can be better. The thing is, can we all start in some small way towards addressing that? Can we say that in some small way, this world is the way I want it to be because I have done something about it?